You were here with us at that time. At the time, I told you I wasn't supposed to be standing there. Growing up, no one would have looked at me and said, that kid's going to be a lieutenant governor someday. Well, America's a great place, isn't it? Yeah! Instead of a single mother from North St. Louis who had to start working when I was 12 to help support his family.
That was Mike Kehoe on the heels of his resounding victory in the Missouri GOP gubernatorial primary yesterday. We have a lot to talk about this morning. Big day yesterday in Missouri politics. The markers are set in Missouri. The teams are set nationally after Tim Walz announced as Vice President Harris's running mate. So we've got a lot to talk about. I'm Randy Tobler. There is Stephanie Bell in this morning. And Stephanie, I know you have a lot to say about some analysis, your thoughts about it. Producer Hannah, we got to give her a big shout out for organizing the simulcast last night. Hope you all were able to catch it as we teamed up with our partners from Springfield, KWTO, and interesting how the two parts of the state with different favorite sons, how they fared.
You guys did the hard part, the anchors.
No.
Making sense of all the numbers as they came
cats
in.
is the toughest, and we're the cats. And all of us men were childless cat people at any rate. So, and John Marsh as well. Great work in Jefferson City. Let's go to Stephanie. Stephanie, your thoughts. We were watching the ticker tape. We were watching the Secretary of State's website, way behind the New York Times and the Associated Press. And it was interesting how things flipped in the LG and the Secretary of State race, at least on the official Missouri site. But earlier on, I think things were changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge night for Missouri. I was at the Kehoe watch party last night. Obviously have been a huge Kehoe supporter from the beginning. And I think yesterday went wonderfully for him. And I mean, and if you saw like a little bit of behind the scenes, apparently he went to vote and comes out from voting.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit last night.
Yeah, comes out from voting, and there's a woman in the parking lot who wasn't able to start her car, so he gets out the jumper cables and helps her out. And a lot of people, and I didn't really hear this word before yesterday, but when it was used, I was like, that's such a perfect word for Mike Kehoe, and that's servant leadership.
Yep.
And, and I think when I look back at the midterms, when we, didn't get the red wave we wanted, it was a lot about candidate quality. And when I look overall at the races yesterday, it was a lot about candidate quality. When you think about people like Mike Kehoe and you think about people like Andrew Bailey, we kind of saw people running in these slates. And I thought, for some folks, I thought they got carried by other people on their, quote unquote slate. But Mike Kehoe and Andrew Bailey are good people. And I am really excited about the future of Missouri with those two.
Yeah. And that's what I heard all through the days was that Mike, while some wanted to paint him as establishment, he's actually a guy who will be able to move things more in that truly conservative direction. It's a slower, I think, drumbeat than many would like. I mean, we've heard those hoofbeats from the insurgent right. How Mike will manage the reality that he didn't get 60% of the vote, and that was split, I think it's fairly said, between Bill Eigel and Jay Ashcroft.
Yeah, but no one thought, when I said I think he would win by 6 on Scott Fahn's show, everyone kind of gave me a raised eyebrow, and I think Scott told me I was being aggressive. Don't worry, Scott Fahn.
And you're not holding on to that.
Yeah, we're gonna pull that audio where Scott Fahn tells me I'm right. But I think that it was a big night, and I think we're gonna be able to move forward in a way that matters for Missouri and changes things and changes the tone a little bit. And I'm glad to see that for our state.
And Dave Wassinger, I think a steady moderating force in terms of incendiary campaigning. Not that Lincoln had an incendiary campaign at all. I just imagine that was just a matter of presence in enough of the state. He couldn't quite get it over the finish line.
Yeah, Dave Wassinger spent $1 million or more of his own, and so that's really tough to fight against.
7,500 votes separated that one when the smoke cleared, too.
Yeah, I'm super disappointed in that one. Obviously, we were supporting Lincoln, but Dave Wassinger is a good person, I think. I think one of the reasons I'm disappointed, I think, was I feel like, we've seen, I think twice in the last 25 years, someone be elevated from LG up to governor. And while I hope, and expect Mike Kehoe to live a very long life, I feel like the person we elect to LG needs some sort of government experience. And so I wanted to see someone with a little bit more experience there. But everything I know about Dave Wassinger, he is, he's a lawyer. I haven't heard, he's a good person. He's been very involved in the Federalist Society. He helps with election integrity with RNLA.
Former Mizzou curator.
Yeah, I've met his wife. She's lovely. So
and Lincoln remains a powerful force in Jefferson City.
Yeah, he has 2 more years as the appropriations chair in the Senate.
Sure. So, Mike Kehoe, the American dream is more alive than ever and is really a great American story. Starting out in St. Louis, right, and then developing a great business and really, I think, adopting and being adopted by mid-Missouri. And now, depending on how this election goes in November, I can't imagine that he won't be entering the governor's mansion in January.
Yeah, and I think what goes unsaid, I'm going to get I'm like an election night crier, so I'm a little bit emotional this morning.
Steph was going through the Kleenex when we were at the Kehoe rally last night.
But I remember when Jim Talent lost the Senate race, and I was in law school, and I really struggled with that one. And I struggled with that one for the same reason that I was emotional last night, and then I get emotional on elections is these candidates don't do it by themselves, right? They have a huge group of people around them who lift them up and who, and I think when I look around the room and I see the people that, and that's who I'm rooting for that night, is all of the people surrounding them that have worked so hard, that have sacrificed, their own family lives, who are all in for their candidate. And and I think a lot can be said by the people that you surround yourself with. And so last night, it wasn't, obviously I'm rooting for Kehoe, but he has so many quality people surrounding him that I know can do such good work for the state that I was really rooting for everyone else. So. Yeah.
And next time Scott Faughn tries to say that you have a cold black heart and you don't love anything, we can show him this this audio right here.
All that said, I'm going to speak for the tens of thousands, I don't know what the final counts were, of voices that are not unhappy. And this is nothing against Lincoln Huff. This is nothing against I think predominantly Lincoln in this race. I think it's never bad to have an outside voice somewhere in leadership in government. I look at Lisa Meyer here in Columbia. Lisa doesn't have governmental experience. She's already made a huge impact. And I think that having a little check and balance on sort of that ladder to ascendancy is not a bad thing. Some people get hurt. They get knocked off that ladder, and I think it's a temporary knockoff on Lincoln's aspirations. I got a feeling this guy's going to still go very big places in Missouri politics. But I never am unhappy when a reasonable, decent, non-government candidate comes in. It's a good check and balance.
I think certainly, and we get a little bit of that with Denny Hoskins, right? Because Denny Hoskins wins the Secretary of State, and he was kind of on what you would quote unquote like the Freedom Caucus slate. Right. So you get a little bit of that. I think watching Mike Parson and Mike Kehoe work in lockstep as a team at the front of that ticket, in the administration, I think. I could see Lincoln and Mike Kehoe working as that team, so I was really hoping to have that team at the top. Not to say that Dave Wassinger can't come in and work as a team with Mike Kehoe. I think he can. But, I was, still disappointed about that. But again, Denny Hoskins is going to be there at the Secretary of State. The real question is what I think, too, is where does the Freedom Caucus go from here at the state level?
Well, Mike Moon and Rick Bratton both won their re-election, so that was huge. Mike Moon, they said, was going to get a serious challenge, and he just trounced his opponent from Southwest Missouri. Rick Bratton winning huge. The landfill issue really didn't come up too much. I mean, in that, I think the turnout was a interesting thing. Brianna Lennon guys predicted 25%. It was 24.5. I noticed Scott Sharton the other day tweeted that he knew several people in Columbia, Republicans that voted, or Democrats that voted in the Republican primary. And I don't know how many people did that, but we know for a fact, as much as our listeners are probably all Republican, most of them, Boone County is traditionally a Democratic county. In 31,000 ballpark, I've got it up on the website, 939theeagle.com and kws.com. Let's say 31,000 people cast ballots in Boone County. I want people to look at it and click on the link, people. Look at the link. more people took Republican ballots in this Democratic county than took Democratic ballots. Now, that surprises me.
I don't know. Do you think some crossovers, maybe?
Well, I mean, then it's just
interest is it energy?
Maybe they were just interested more in the Republican. I'm not saying all of them did, but some of them clearly did.
I got texts yesterday from friends that I know are Democrats that said I pulled a Republican ballot because I wanted to make a difference or whatever, And so,
what was their agenda? What would their agenda be?
I think they know that whoever got voted in at the statewide level is going to be the candidate. I think from one person in particular, I heard that I don't want it to be Valentina, and so I feel like I need to vote, so I keep her out.
Well, I have a friend who was at least considering, I don't know if they actually did it, was considering pulling a Republican ballot because they were going to vote against Bill Eigel.
And again, I don't know how common that was, but without question, Stephen Weber will win the Senate race in Boone County in a landslide. But for the majority of voters to pick a Republican ballot yesterday, take a look at click the link, folks. I think the numbers tell the story. It's very interesting. And also, let's face it, Stephanie, there is, outside of Dwayne Carey and Charlie Blair, which was a landslide for Sheriff Carey, in the Basinger-Bush race, there really wasn't much on the Democratic side except the statewides.
In Cole County, it was kind of interesting because I talked to some of the election judges last night who were in the next room over from us at the Cole County Courthouse. And they said they had a lot of pushback at the polling places from people saying, well, why do I have to take a Democrat or a Republican ballot?
That's just incredible that that frustrates me because we've talked about this for 30-something years, folks. That is the law.
It's the law.
People,
there you go.
I've said it before. If you don't like it, people, you need to go to the Capitol and get the law changed. Do not take it out on the election judges. That is unacceptable.
The other, I think, impact elections in mid-Missouri, because part of CD3 is, of course, in our listening area. Yep. Dr. Bob Onder, in a late reporting from the St. Charles precincts, pulled it out against mid-Missouri's the hometown guy, Kurt Schaefer, and I know there's a lot of disappointment there. Both very good men, and we haven't heard the last from Kurt either, right? I mean, he's certainly got a leadership and a high impact voice in Missouri,
huge name.
As well as we have to mention Curtis Gregory, right? And
Curtis Gregory won. That was a bruising primary, very, very negative between he and Doug Ritchie. I've got a story up 939theeagle.com.
Right. Kevin wants to weigh in, 573-874-9390. You will hear from Dr. Bob Onder at 7:35, Denny Hoskins at 8:10, and let's just say the next governor of the state of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, at 8:35. So keep it here all morning. Here's Kevin. Kevin, your thoughts on the primary, quickly.
Okay, well, 6 months ago I called in and said that Republicans needed to put a moderate abortion bill on the agenda for the primary. Now the Democrats are putting in a constitutional amendment for abortion, and none of our seats are going to be guaranteed. You could be looking at a complete sweep with the Democrats, and it is because they always plan ahead, and Republicans only think 6, 8, 10 months in advance.
Okay.
We're probably going to be screwed when it comes in November.
Well, you think that Harris-Walz ticket may have some legs and some down ballot, including with the abortion win?
whole lot more over the last few weeks.
Just another tea and crumpets morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell with the Daily DC Rundown.
That was angry Cori Bush, and she woke up particularly angry this morning because she went down in spectacular fashion. Yesterday, I know a lot of people were hoping that we would knock off another member of the squad. Of course, the first to go down was Jamal Bowman not too long ago, and she was target number 2, and she is done. I was just pulling up the official number. Well, I guess they're unofficial still. In Missouri, from the Secretary of State's page, it shows Wesley Bell beating her 51-45. And so not a good night for Cori Bush, or apparently her, is it husband or boyfriend who she pays on the side to be like her security guard?
I think it was her boyfriend before it was her husband.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not
Still
sure.
Not
well, that's
great.
usually how it works, Randy.
It's her boyfriend.
Of course. Of course, a huge day in Missouri yesterday. And, we just haven't been able to get away from the breaking news. And so also as we were, we haven't even mentioned all the races yet. We're going to get there. But Kamala picked Tim Walz yesterday. And I think that's, we have a lot of time still to talk about that one, but I think it's very dangerous. He's like, they're kind of portraying him as like America's dad, and he kind of looks, he's cute. He kind of looks like America's dad. It's not like quite like a George Bush type thing, but a little bit. And with as crazy as she is, like putting him, I mean, you can hate Hillary Clinton, you can't hate America's dad. And that is not good for us.
I mean, it worked for Uncle Joe.
Right.
We're going to learn more about the American electorate and culture than we are about the candidates from now through November.
So obviously his record, in Minnesota, they had, there's just the data coming out of there is horrible. The RGA, which is the Republican Governors Association, has some really good stats up and some good graphics if you want to go and grab those. But, he expanded access to driver's licenses for illegal immigrants, which we've talked about here on this show, which potentially opens them up to, voting illegally, which is scary. He has defunded the police. He's declared Minnesota a sanctuary city. He called Joe Biden an American hero. Big news with that pick yesterday. I think, for Kamala, I think it was a smart pick, and I think we are going to have to find a way to, defend against him becoming America's dad.
It's amazing. I mean, they're painting him as everyone's mid-America. I'm a deer hunter. I'm a high school teacher. Of course, he does. surprises, some bitter disappointments last night in Missouri. I think we can all agree, can't we, that Corey Bush in a what was it? Pretty remarkable
it was like 10
defeat.
points.
10 points, wasn't it? Like 55, 45, something. But
51-45.
There you go.
There was a couple of others in the race.
she got trounced pretty good if you think about that. An incumbent who surged into that spot, when she was elected.
Remember her face from the Ferguson riots. I mean, she was right in the middle of that from literally day one.
That was her claim to fame.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the best thing to be in a race, right, is the incumbent. It's so rare to knock off an incumbent, but we had one right here in mid-Missouri, John, with that assessor's race.
Boy, right? Oh boy, yeah, that was one where Tim Theroff kind of ran away with the race. Cole County incumbent assessor Chris Estes, who'd been on the job since 2008, was defeated by Tim Theroff. Came in with pretty good backing from the realtors locally and the national side of things. And in his defense, he did 25 years as a personal property appraiser, so pretty well known by at least by the real estate community. But
on the statewide level, certainly incumbency was an advantage because we saw both Treasurer Malik and Andrew Bailey basically run away with everything. I mean, Bailey, I think, John, was the first race that was called. It wasn't close. And Malik, too, that just put up huge numbers. So
from the get-go.
Yeah, so certainly their incumbency was a big advantage. And glad to see for both of those guys last night.
And we will be visiting with many of the headliners. Dave Wassinger will be with us. He's, of course, the nominee for lieutenant governor. Narrowly defeated Lincoln Huff at 7:10. Dr. Bob Onder at 7:35. Denny Hoskins, I think the lone victor in the Freedom Caucus, right? I mean, did a great job and really had a quite substantial victory.
And something should be said. I mean, we've been talking about Mike Kehoe, but I mean, Bill Eigel, putting up huge numbers. Yes. Jay Ashcroft in third. I mean, the people around Bill Eigel and his campaign. I mean, things should be said for how well that was run. And I would say the same thing about Denny Hoskins. Certainly, I think he got some of the coattails from Bill Eigel's work because a lot of the events were joint and everything else. But, I mean, he had that red jacket, and if there was an event, he was there. And he has been on the trail from the very beginning. Hannah, he was out there at Pilot Grove where Hannah and I were at.
He was, and I don't think I ever got around to posting the photo. He had some really cool tennis shoes.
He had some, they were like...
They were red, white, and blue.
They weren't the Trump tennis shoes, but they might as well have been. They were America tennis shoes. They were, we need a link, Denny Hoskins.
I think our outgoing Secretary of State may remember his encounter with a certain senator on the campaign trail as well.
And I will say, I mean, he obviously being the Secretary of State is something very different than being in the Missouri Senate. Denny Hoskins is competent. I think he's a smart guy. I think he can execute the duties of that office in a way that will serve the state well. I think I think it's so nice to see people work hard and be rewarded for that. And so, although I was disappointed, that Dean Plocker didn't pull it out, I think Denny Hoskins is. I think people are going to be pleased with the way that he executes the duties of that office.
Well, I did get a chuckle. I think it might have been Denny Hoskins himself, but I did see a tweet last night saying something along the lines of Denny Red Jacket Hoskins. So he is adapting that as part of his name now, and you love to see it.
He's never going to live that down. And I there are things that I want to say, but when you I want to gatekeep, Hannah, that's your version of this, right?
Yeah.
So he's known for the red jacket. I know a lot of people know, Sarah Walsh always wore, and she still does, wears red cowboy boots. And so they have a signature look, which I think is wonderful. And then so I'm sporting Team Kehoe green. I wore green last night. He had this team color, which I think served him well. And I think it was wonderful. I went to the Grand Cafe beforehand, before the polls closed, and there was a huge table of everyone in green. It was lovely. But and so I think it's interesting when you just zoom out and talk about candidates. And I said, what is going to be our first candidate that has a signature emoji? Because I'm for real. Because I
never
probably
thought
Mike
of that.
Kehoe, maybe with a Mustang or something like that.
Or like a 4-leaf clover. I was trying to think of a green emoji, but I've
used the green heart a couple times, anytime I've talked about Kehoe online.
And I have some favorite influencers that like have a signature emoji. And if you recall, I mean, the Free Palestine people, they overtook the watermelon emoji, Hannah, on social media. And they were just, that meant Palestine. And they were, and I said, I think next cycle, I think if you're a candidate, you need to be thinking not only about your color, but also your emoji. Maybe maybe the issues first and emojis second.
But
still, I don't think we're that far away.
Still an important issue, but maybe not number one.
A lot of incoming here. Melissa says thanks for last night, and it was great. I want to thank Hannah for putting together a great show last night. It was difficult to pull off a simulcast in 3 separate frequencies and get it all together. And we want to thank Hannah for all her hard work there, as well as the great news team, John and you and Brian and Don Luzader down in Springfield, keeping on top of things. Mike Murphy came in, of course, and was vocal in that. As things were changing, it was interesting to watch how the tide turned, especially in that LG and SOS race, as those precincts came in from Metro St. Louis.
Yeah, what happened with St. Charles County? There was some kerfluffle.
Falling down on the job. I think I saw Mark Ellinger make an appearance on Scott Fawn's show, and I think he called it election malpractice or something.
Yeah, that was a good line.
Their returns were so slow last night, and even larger counties were in before that. So yeah, they were going to have to figure that out before November, because that was the big. It definitely tipped the scales for people like Bob Onder, against Lincoln Huff. All of we saw that huge influx from St. Charles County, and it changed the races.
Yeah.
Boy, props to the folks at the Cole County Clerk's office, Steve Korsmeyer, Matt Musselman, and their whole staff.
They had
returns into us. They had final returns to us by 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And he almost hit his prediction. Steve Korsmeyer said 35% of Cole County's voters would go to the polls. It was almost 34% when the ballots were all counted.
He was right on.
Not a bad showing.
Yeah, he was right on, and Breonna Lennon, too, was really close right on. And I don't know if you saw her tweet, Hannah, but Ashland on Saturday way outperformed Centralia in that.
No, I don't think I saw that
Saturday voting. So shout out to all my Ashland people for getting out and voting early. Now, we are going to be on you to do that in November.
That's right.
To get out and vote early and get your ballot in.
Now you will be on the ballot in November, right?
No.
Oh no, I thought you were. I thought you were up for re-election. No, when does that come up?
You can write me in for any office you want, Randy.
Well, I thought you were a councilwoman.
I am, but that election's in the spring.
Oh, it's in the spring. Okay.
Yes.
She could be a Kehoe cabinet member, though, folks. You never know.
You guys, we want her to stay on Wake Up Missouri.
Yeah, we don't want. There's a lot of folks that would like to see. I have to say,
and it's a lot of paperwork for me when she's on the ballot.
I do. And shout out to my Ashland friends, because I convinced them mightily. I was lobbying really hard for them to move our alderman meeting from last night to tonight, because I want to participate, and I knew I wouldn't be able to be at the meeting last night. So our alderman meeting is this evening, and I appreciate.
They moved it just for you?
Well, I mean, we need a quorum, and well, and I'm a public servant, and I want to be there and participate. And I knew, election night was not a go for me. So, anyway,
I'll tell you what, if I'd had stock in Kleenex last night at the Kehoe rally and Steph, man, I could have made a fortune.
And yet you didn't take any photos, John.
Yeah, I'm an election night crier. I'm so emotional.
Her makeup started to run. I wasn't supposed to take her picture.
Yeah, I've been a ball of stress for a while. And I think it's a lot, right? There's so many people involved, and there's so much hard work, and I think if you're really close to it and you're close to the people, that for some people, you really hope they win. At the same time, for some people, last night will be them and their teams, the end of their political career, right?
Yeah.
And we have I think what we saw with all the Trump endorsements, what we know in Missouri is we have such a deep bench of of good conservative people and public servants, and knowing that some of those people, we won't see their name on the ballot again. I struggle with that. It's hard for me to watch friends go through that and say goodbye to some people who've really served us well.
Hopefully they'll find a place in influence and in government, or in at least some kind of role, because that experience. I mean, I think of Jay Ashcroft. I mean, he took our election integrity scores on Heritage from out of the top 10 to what, third? So, he, had an influence, a positive influence on election integrity. Hope that Denny Hoskins, I'm confident he will build on that and continue to try to. The one thing we have to address is really tightening up the registration process so that you can't have non-citizens, whether they're illegal or legal, voting and having even the potential. That needs to be tightened up.
And of course, we've got that ballot measure coming in November on that issue.
Very
and
important.
I know Denny Hoskins has been watching this, as were all of those candidates. And I think you're going to see more people digging down into that, because I think a lot's been revealed through this. And that's another nice thing about the campaign season, right? Is everyone's kind of digging around and doing their research. And, your own experience with your friends, Randy, I think a lot was revealed about, potential for funny business there with the registration.
Really opened my eyes, yeah. How little it takes to just get all you need is somehow get a hold of that photo ID that's recognized and, say, yeah, I'm a citizen, wink, wink, and that's it. Now, Brianna Lennon, I think, did some reassurance in that they check with several federal databases and agencies, but they don't check with Department of Homeland Security. That's another one that I think there are some opportunities for improvement, as we like to say. Let's talk about another race that we're going to be keeping our eyes on. Our friend, I think we can all say he's a friend of ours, Jesus Osete, was unopposed in the Republican side for the 13th Division Circuit Judge here in Boone and Callaway County. Okay, so 16,400 Republicans showed up and, cast a vote for Jesus. Stephanie Morel, who he'll oppose on the Democrat side, got 14,000 votes. What does that say about the coming November election?
Well, Brian said he was really surprised that that there were more people pulling in Boone on the Republican side. It could say one of two things, Randy. One would be that a lot of Democrats pulled a Republican ballot, which I think is what Brian was suggesting. I think instead it just means that there were so many competitive races on the Republican side that a lot of Democrats stayed home. And what we know is it's very likely that abortion is going to be on the ballot in November. It's very likely that minimum wage is going to be on the ballot in November, and Democrats are not going to stay home. And so we will need to get out for Jesus in force in November for sure. And,
we really do.
And he is a quality candidate in putting together a great campaign, and I hope we can
wouldn't you say, Islamic Muslim voters in the land?
There are a lot of Somalis in Minnesota, especially the Twin Cities.
And it turns out that this guy, even though, as you mentioned early on, Stephanie, this guy really is sort of like Kamala, right? He's sort of chameleon, and that's the way they're going to manage this. When they need him to be left and radical and woke and, all the things that Harris used to be before she moderated in the last 2 weeks, they'll do that. When he needs to be the Midwestern guy, born in Nebraska, adopted into Minnesota, and a hunter, a military guy, a service member, a school teacher,
coach,
right?
Coach, dad.
That's what they'll do. And I got to think, and I mean this with all due respect. Well, you know how I feel about you ladies on this show. You gals you personify the ultimate American conservative woman at this point. However,
because we're pretty.
Now,
somebody sent me a T-shirt that was like,
John,
Republican girls are pretty.
The lawyer just trapped me, because if I say no, that's not it, then I say they're not pretty. And if I say yes, that's true. Oh, I'm just pretty. I can't win this one, John.
You could turn to the judge and object.
I need to. You know what I need to do? I need to do one of these that I've known some ladies to do this. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Pretty girls vote Republican. Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal.
There's a T-shirt that says "Pretty girls vote Republican."
Here's the deal. I think that image of an aspirant, ascending woman of color on the precipice of becoming the president of the United States with a subordinate old white guy is going to play in, I'm channeling Rush Limbaugh here, feminazis.
Yeah, no,
feminazis. That's it, baby. It's time to hammer down and turn the leaf. I know that's what's going on. There's some optics there.
I don't necessarily like that term, but I do.
You don't
think,
like feminazis?
Didn't they say
we know
like
what
that's
a
why?
feminazi is.
But that's why she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, because they thought he might like outshine her.
Yeah.
And in this way, she still, retains the top of and is not going to be outshined by America's dad. But I think this pick was smart on their behalf, and I think it's dangerous, and I think we are going to have to mobilize like we haven't before for November.
Let me define what I mean by a feminazi. Just go back to January to the inauguration. The day, or was it the day of or the day after inauguration?
Wearing the hats?
The people wearing the hats.
Okay.
Those are the feminazis. That's what I'm talking about. Okay?
Well, they're going to be out in
term
force.
coined by Rush Limbaugh.
That's right.
They're going to be out in force if this abortion thing gets on the ballot in November, and we are going to have to work very hard.
All of our strong family and everything else that are concerned
started to feel more confident as the late night wore on. So we're delighted to have achieved the victory. We looked at working together with our opponents and all Missourians to win in November, and we're very excited this morning.
Let's just do a little bit of speculation that you are victorious in November. I mean, if Missouri electorate follows suit, we would assume that should be the case. Of course, I know you're not going to count your chickens before they've hatched. I get that. And let's assume Mike Kehoe similarly lands in the governor's mansion. Do you know Mike Kehoe well? What is your relationship, if any, with him?
I don't know Mike well. I do. Mike and I know one another. I think we have a very cordial and hopefully we have a very good working relationship. I've had some interaction with Mike again. I just in passing, I've sat down with him and, for probably less than 15 minutes of my life, but he and I would know one another if we went to a cocktail reception. That's the extent of what we know. So it's going to be a matter of sitting down and getting together, know one another, and hopefully working together to get some of these big conservative ideas across the finish line. So
if we talk in Kamala Harris terms, in terms of your Venn diagram for your ideology, your worldview for governance of Missouri, maybe we should call it the state view, and we look at Mike Kehoe's from what you know publicly and from his track record, where do those Venn diagrams overlap in terms of things like workforce and taxes and so forth?
Well, I campaigned, Randy, on getting these more big conservative ideas across the finish line that are taking place in Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky, and provided, assuming future Governor Kehoe is willing to work toward those goals, which I'm cautiously optimistic he will, we'll work hand in glove with one another, and I would tend to be on the more conservative side of that spectrum that you've just described.
Dave, when you talked with us on the campaign trail, you brought up the issue of DEI, and going back to your years as a curator at the University of Missouri, lo and behold, a couple weeks ago, Mizzou announced that they're doing away with their DEI department. Your reaction to that?
I was at the University of Missouri yesterday. We had hired the Board of Curators Secretary, Cindy Harmon, and she had her retirement party. So I happened to be in mid-Missouri. So I saw President Moon Choi, who sent me an email this morning congratulating me. And I thought that was a good move by President Choi to do away with that DEI department. We needed to take a step further and get rid of DEI throughout all state departments, throw it out in all college, publics, and universities in the state of Missouri. And I'll look forward to working to try to accomplish that goal. But I did see President Choi just yesterday afternoon. I was over at Mizzou Arena visiting with him, visiting with Robin Winokur, the current Board of Curators chair, who was extremely nice and vibrant. And I think she was excited. I think President Choi is excited for me. He sent me a note congratulating me on my victory this morning. So we look forward to working with the university. As you know, I'm a big Mizzou guy, and generations of my family have gone to the University of Missouri, so we are big fans of the University of Missouri Mizzou.
Dave Walsinger is our guest. Again, he is live with us here on News Radio 950 KWS, and he is also live on 93.9 The Eagle. He wins a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-way primary on the Republican side with about 31% of the vote, and beats Lincoln Huff by roughly 7,000 votes. Your opponent, Mr. Walsinger, in November is going to be State Representative Richard Brown. I know him pretty well. I covered him for a number of years in Jefferson City, 8-year member of the General Assembly. He is from Kansas City, and he is the assistant minority leader, if you will. A, have you had a chance to talk to him at all? And B, what are some of the issues you plan to campaign on and raise in this race?
I was at a Farm Bureau function in, Cuba, Missouri, and is it State Representative Brown? Is that his name?
That's State Representative Richard Brown.
He came out in the parking lot after the event, came up and introduced myself. He said, "I've heard great things about you." The guy couldn't have been more friendly. I talked to him for 5 minutes in the parking lot in Cuba, Missouri. That's the extent of what I know about Richard Brown. He was a very friendly African-American guy who is frankly probably a lot. If he's coming from Kansas City, urban area, he's probably far more liberal than I am. So I have not reviewed his voting record, but we feel cautiously optimistic we will prevail in November.
Okay. Well, you will get to know Mike Kehoe should you both ascend to those respective chairs of you as lieutenant governor and him as governor. I imagine you can probably go to school on his experience being the lieutenant governor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I will reach out to Mike and many, many others to, there's a learning curve. I'm a conservative outsider, so I'm welcome to ideas. And again, I campaigned on conservative ideas being across the finish line, so I stand firm in my belief. And I'm, again, not going to be subject to lobbyists and special interest. I'm fighting for Missourians, but I look forward to meeting hopefully future Governor Kehoe, along with all the other folks. Peter Kinder texted me or called me last night. I'm going to call him. So I will allow everybody to weigh in and get their thoughts. But again, I am not going to be subject to these lobbyists and special interests. I'm going to be my own man, and we're going to fight for Missourians and not these special interests that I think have controlled Jefferson City for years.
Dave, the lieutenant governor's race is, office rather, has been, kind of categorized as a lot of ceremonial kind of things. Ombudsman, though, for senior citizens and all. Well, one big part of the job is being the ex officio president of the Senate, the tiebreaker and all. You're looking forward to that line of work if you're elected.
Absolutely. Again, my belief, I'm not doing this for my good health. We lost a little sleep last night. We're looking to get big conservative ideas across the finish line in Missouri. And as president of the Senate, I will do everything I can to make that happen.
Dave, we're talking to Dave Wassinger. He's the nominee in the GOP side of the slate for lieutenant governor in Missouri. And unless there's some kind of a major cataclysmic upset, we would assume that he's going to be the next lieutenant governor. A lot of the my lane's the healthcare lane, and increasingly research shows that social determinants of health, those upstream things that really affect people's health, the quality of their housing, whether their air conditioners are leaking in and causing mold in their rental units. I can name a myriad of things, and the data's pretty clear. I see a lane when I look at the various boards and commissions that the lieutenant governor serves on, the public buildings, housing development, or economic development council in rural, a lot of very poor areas in rural Missouri. Oh, the special health, psychological, and social needs of minority older individuals. I think of especially our minority older folks when I worked in St. Louis at Barnes Hospital and at WashU as a assistant professor there. Boy, we saw so much effect on people's health with these kind of things. I think there's a lane there for you. What do you think, Dave?
Randy, I think you're onto something. You and I had a chance to visit for the first time. We were at a Vitae Foundation dinner in Columbia, and I think you and I talked for 5 or 10 minutes at that foundation. You started educating me on some of these healthcare issues. Again, I'm not a doctor by trade. You have that background. So again, I would welcome your thoughts and ideas as I ramp up and get up to speed, because you caught my attention when we were at the Vitae Foundation dinner, just educating me on a few issues in the 5 to 10 minutes that you and I had. By the way, I very, very much enjoyed our conversation in Columbia, so I did. And
I have to tell you, that's the first time I met you. I hadn't heard your name, and I became really very, very, very fond of your stances and the way you've conducted yourself in terms of going after special interest groups, and legally from your professional source. What do you think about the impact, positive or negative, on Republican politics of the abortion issue and that initiative petition that's probably going to be on the November ballot? I don't know if has Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft certified that, gang? Do we know?
It's the deadline's next Tuesday.
Okay, so what if that makes it on the ballot? How does that affect the race, if at all?
Well, I think it's going to generate turnout for both sides, but particularly Democrat voters. I think billions or millions of dollars from these left-wing billionaires are going to flow in from, various parts of the country to try to turn us from a pro-life state to a pro-abortion state overnight. Again, this is what's frustrating to me. We had a supermajority in the legislature of Republicans that we could have had some initiative petition reform, so this wouldn't take place. And the Republican majority failed to get it done. They do abortion this year; it'll be guns next year. So that's one of the reasons I'm running, Randy. It's frustrating. These Republicans that hold a supermajority are just not getting these big conservative issues across the finish line, and I'm going to fight and try to get all these issues across the finish line as president of the Missouri Senate and as Missouri's next lieutenant governor.
And we should also point out something else. We don't like to think about this, but we have to. When you talk about the importance of lieutenant governor, I'll give folks 2 examples. In 2018, the previous governor, Eric Greitens, had resigned. He facing potential impeachment. Didn't quite happen at that time, but he was facing that. He resigned, and Mike Parson ended up elevating to become governor. And you go back to 2000, the governor at the time, Mel Carnahan, died in a plane crash. He was running for the U.S. Senate, and Roger Wilson very briefly became governor. So it's not just presiding over the Senate. I mean, you've had, and then when the governor goes overseas, if Dave Wassinger were to win, Dave, if you were to win, if whoever becomes governor goes overseas, you'd be acting governor. That's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. I mean, Missourians need to choose a backup, again, that holds good conservative beliefs. For years, remember, we had Jay Nixon, who was a Democrat governor, and we had Peter Kinder as a Republican. He was a little bit of a dysfunctional. And many states don't like that. They will run as a ticket. For example, Florida, you run as a governor and lieutenant governor run as a ticket. Missouri's not like that. You may have competing parties, as Peter Kinder and Jay Nixon were, that hold the Missouri lieutenant governor's office. But I feel confident, assuming Governor Kehoe governs in a good conservative belief. I've met Mike. My dealings with him have been very positive. In the very brief time I've dealt with him, so I look forward to working with him. And if I need to step in while he's overseas, I'd be honored and delighted to do so.
We do have to ask the tough questions sometimes, Dave, and that's our job. And one of those jobs is I was admiring Will Scharf's very public and gracious concession speech when A.G. Bailey clearly took that race early. He said, I wish him the very best, and I thought it was a very gracious and conciliatory concession. Did you get a call from Lincoln Huff? If you're comfortable talking about it, at least the broad outline, and as, an influential person in the Missouri Senate with whom you will be working in various ways, how's that relationship going to work out?
Randy, I saw you in Columbia, and I've traveled throughout the state to Lincoln Day events. One of the reasons I won, I had a tremendous amount of grassroots support, particularly in southwest Missouri, in my hometown of Hannibal, northeast Missouri. And then also, to my knowledge, I have never met nor have I ever spoken to Lincoln Huff, and I have not heard from him as of the time you're talking right now.
Wow.
So to my knowledge, I have never spoken to the man.
That's news.
Yeah,
Gang, that's news.
And that is really
Dave,
that's a surprise.
You will learn,
wow.
if you will hear me, and I hope Mike Kehoe will hear me, my crusade until they put me under the ground is to address health care and how it has gone so far south from a federal and from a state standpoint, and how someone needs to be an advocate for health care. Anyway, I am a balls and strikes guy. It often ruffles feathers. It bothers me that Lincoln Huff has not called you. I'll make it public.
I have not heard from Lang. Again, it was a late night, so maybe he was in bed. I wanted to be in bed at 11:30. I'm a early to bed, early to rise, guys. So again, it's early. So
no, that's true.
Hopefully, we'll call you up this morning, and if not, we'll work with him.
And again, Lincoln Huff, I know someone personally who's a friend of this show. I go to church with the young man, works in Lincoln's office. He has great credentials. I think it's disappointing that he didn't call you. We will give him a chance. We would invite him to call you. I think it's,
Thank you, Randy.
Okay. All right. Hey,
Very
we thank you for being with us, and best of luck to you. Godspeed as we move towards November. I'm sure we'll be in touch and talk more as the campaign goes on. Dave Wassinger, the GOP candidate for lieutenant governor.
Always a pleasure, Randy. Thank you. Let's win in November.
the time. What's up, Hannah?
It's all good. I have a long-awaited installment in the Weird Animals story. That was a thing for several months, about a year ago, maybe. All the stories from zoos with animals doing weird things were going viral all at once. But this is a prime example on why you probably shouldn't have open air exhibits with birds of flight next to predator exhibits. The Minnesota Zoo learned this the hard way. They had a trainer that was doing some work with a Eurasian eagle owl, and the handler wasn't able to get the owl to return to them, like they were practicing. The owl went for a little joyride around the zoo. And of all the exhibits that the owl could have landed in, any guesses? The owl landed in the tiger exhibit at the zoo and was promptly eaten for lunch.
Oh, my.
So the zoo is...
It's a good one.
The zoo has made a statement saying that they are working closely with the free flight bird training partners to review their policies and procedures.
Just weeds out the non-performers, kind of, doesn't it?
I guess.
Nice little appetizer for the lions.
I was just thinking how I hate birds, but I don't wish that on the owl. I don't like birds, but yikes.
Well, that's just, Darwin 101, I think.
Oh, man alive. I love it. Hey, we've got... winner of the Republican nomination for the CD3 seat, replacing Blaine Luetkemeyer. Bob, hard-fought battle. Probably didn't get much sleep after the party last night and up with us this morning. We appreciate that. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. It's great to be back. One person keeping me up last night was that around midnight I got a call from President Trump. So, no, it was a great night, and I congratulate my opponents, especially Kurt Schaefer, on a hard-fought campaign, and I look forward to representing the entire district in Congress.
We just got done talking with Dave Wassinger, so we want to sort of ask the same question of everyone. I appreciated Will Scharf's, public concession when A.G. Bailey trounced him. You didn't trounce Kurt Schaefer. You beat him. Have you heard from Kurt?
Yeah. Kurt texted me late last night. We haven't had an opportunity to call yet. So we texted a little bit about how we can work best to serve the entire district, including mid-Missouri.
And we've been talking about what a deep bench we have in the GOP, across up and down the slate, whether it's local, or statewide elections or federal elections. So it's great that we have that. And I hope that it was a pretty fiery last few days there, back and forth in the two campaigns. Hopefully there can be some unity, and I know that you and Kurt and Dave and Lincoln and everyone are going to have to be part of the unity movement in this party if we're going to defeat our opponents, your opponent in the CD3 race come November. And Bob, I have a concern about the coattails of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the chameleon ticket at the top, what they might do along with the abortion initiative petition, what that might do to the race. I think it might be more interesting than it should be otherwise. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Randy. The downside of having a very deep bench, which we do, because in multiple races there were multiple good people running. So the downside are these contentious primaries. But yes, I am concerned. Those of us who know Kamala Harris well know that she's a complete and total embarrassment. She's a failure at home. She would be an embarrassment abroad. And yet, between now and Election Day, the media will prop her up the way they did Joe Biden 4 years ago. I am concerned, and we do need unity. We do need to come together, as a party and defeat our common enemy. I mean, it really is a difference in vision, a vision of a prosperous, strong America where all people have the opportunity to thrive, and in a very dark vision where the Democrat Party assumes absolute power and tramples on our rights. So yes, we need to come together, and I am very hopeful that will happen.
Dr. Bob, talk to us about what we're seeing with the victory of Wesley Bell in the first district congressional race. So potentially, now eliminating Cori Bush, another squad member on Capitol Hill.
Yes. I suspect that Wesley Bell and I will vote differently on many, many issues. But as best we can tell, he is not going to be, the embarrassment a squad member is. And those who worked with, the Clays, the Clay dynasty, said that they were. I really never met either of the Clays. Said they were not so bad to work with, and our delegation, I think, is better served with Wesley Bell than Cori Bush.
Bob Onder is our guest. Dr. Bob Onder served in both the Missouri House and the Missouri Senate, and he wins his primary on the Republican side by about 10,000 votes over Senator Kurt Schaefer. Senator, obviously, congratulations on your primary win. I do want to ask you an ad that I heard that didn't run until maybe the last 2 days of the campaign here on the Eagle, but actually it was taped by Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer, and I heard it several times. But he said flat out that you don't live in the district. I know people don't have to necessarily live in the district they're running in, although I guess you have to move at some point. But do you have any response to that? He said basically you don't live in the district.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a lifelong Missourian. I've lived in the 3rd Congressional District for about 24 of the last 25 years. Practiced medicine in the district for 30 of the last 30 years, and served the district in the Missouri House, then the Senate for a decade. And yeah, last fall, I moved out. I moved basically one town over to Augusta, Missouri. So my wife and I have already been working with a realtor. We've identified some places. We'll be moving back, but we've lived in St. Charles County. It's not like I'm, carpetbagging from another state or something. Yeah. But long, deep ties to the 3rd Congressional District.
And to be very fair to you, which we need to be, the district change, you would have had no way to know that. The geography changed a little bit, and it was kind of late when they did that, and it changes every 10 years. So thank you.
Blaine's retirement in January was a surprise to a lot of people, including me as well.
So, assuming that you do go on to victory in the November election, Bob Onder, what committees would you jockey for as a freshman congressman?
Well, Randy, we are fellow physicians, and the healthcare continues to assume a larger and larger part of our budget, and probably the committees like Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, Education and Workforce are probably the ones where my expertise in medicine and in law could be best put to use. So perhaps I'll join my good friend Jason Smith on Ways and Means.
Oh, boy, that would be something. That would be great. Assuming that, of course, the Republicans hold the House and maybe at least stay the same or gain something in the Senate. What are your thoughts just initially here 24 hours after Tim Walz is named as Kamala Harris's running mate? And what does it mean for the Trump-Vance campaign?
Well, yeah. I don't think many Americans know Tim Walz, and I think that's one of the reasons he was chosen. I think that the more you know about the Democrats' record of failure, the less you like it. So there's just no way, if the American people look closely at the failures of the Biden-Harris administration versus the prosperity of the Trump era, I don't think there's any way that they will choose Harris-Walz. But I think that the media will try to reinvent Biden-Harris between now and November, and we've got a fight on our hands. That is for sure.
All righty, Bob Onder, congratulations on a hard-fought, a tough battle. We're hearing from some of our listeners. Boy, that was a wickedly back and forth battle between you and Kurt, and hopefully there's can be more unity as we move forward in the party. And they say that Bob is going to earn my vote in the next 2 years, and I'm confident you will really work towards that.
Well, I'll be spending a lot of time in central Missouri, a lot of time in Columbia, talking to leaders in the university, leaders in the ag community. I will be a congressman for the whole district, and I'm just honored and privileged to be able to serve in that role. Thank you so much.
All right. Hey, Bob, congratulations, and we look forward to talking to you as we move forward towards the November election.
Thank you. Have a great day.
There he is, Dr. Bob Onder.
And one thing you asked yesterday about endorsements, if people endorse the candidate that lost, I mean, this is a perfect time to bring it up. Missouri Farm Bureau and most of the commodity groups, almost all of them listen to this show. They almost all endorse Senator Kurt Schaefer in this race. So I seriously doubt they're going to endorse this Bethany Mann out of Wentzville, who, by the way, is pretty bright candidate. I mean, she is pretty impressive in the Democratic side. She's knows the issues. The issue she's going to face is the geography. This is a very Republican district, but I am going to be curious, will these farm groups turn around and endorse Onder, because they were all in for Kurt Schaefer?
And will Schaefer supporters leave that bullet blank on that ballot? I mean, hopefully Republicans will unify and coalesce.
I think almost all of the Republicans I've heard of had said we are going to support the ultimate nominee. The only person who I heard say publicly that they wouldn't be able to do that was Bill Eigel.
Yeah, and which is a shame.
And Kurt Schaefer is a good and decent human
is
and a
yes.
conservative through and through. And I think his supporters will line up behind Bob Onder.
Yeah, no doubt Kurt Schaefer will. I'm just, again, I don't know about all the supporters, so we'll see.
And I had no doubt that the answer to the question about did Kurt communicate with you would be yes, and he did.
And we should point out that we did ask Dave Wassinger whether anybody called him, and he said no, not Holly Rader, not anybody.
Yep. He said it was a late night.
Until really late.
He said it was a late night, still early. I hope they're still sleeping. So that was his answer to me. Yeah. It's tough losing a close race.
But if you're looking for unity, throwing an opponent under the bus on the radio the morning after your race is not the way to unify the party. So I hope he cleans that up.
It was, all right. It's just it is interesting. It is interesting, and I was a little surprised at the lieutenant governor primary. I
Day this year with a raffle, and just what did the lucky winner walk away with? An AR-15, of course. The contest was so popular, the 4th of July River Church gave away 3 more guns. A gun is a blessing because here in America, we have what's called the Second Amendment, and we're free Americans. According to Pastor Chris Zahner, Christ gives us freedom, and so as Christ has given us freedom, Americans are free as well, so it correlates. And he did point out that their attendance doubled after the whole thing happened. He said, we'll probably do it again, maybe at Christmas time, to be a blessing again. The winners did not want to be identified, most of them, and declined to comment. And it makes us think, didn't a Mid-Missouri radio host give away an AR during the Senate campaign a few years ago when he ran against Josh Hawley? I'm just saying. And now you know the rest of that armed to the teeth story.
Wow. It's interesting how that nexus between politics and, and religion sometimes bubbles to the top, even though I think, aren't there some IRS rules about that?
Guns and pass the collection plate, I guess, right?
Don't forget Mom and Chevrolet and apple pie. Speaking of religion and politics, they're trying to paint Tim Walz as a good Lutheran guy. And I can tell you, he's a member of a Lutheran. I know a little bit about Lutheranism. He's a member of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. It is the most woke, progressive, absolutely. I mean, you talk about intersectionality and everything else. I mean, that is the ELCA.
Not exactly Missouri Synod Lutherans, correct?
No. And so I think, and not to attack the man's religion, but I mean, it has a lot of harmony, his choice of denominational faith with his public policy positions. I mean, absolutely overlapping totally. So, it'll be interesting to see how the Trump and Vance campaign, how that really exposes Tim Walz for the wild progressive he is. I mean, he has absolutely been, forget the coach and the school teacher and everything else. Not to mention, there's this controversy that has bubbled to the top about him back in one of his earlier races. I think it was when he wasn't he in the Army for 20 years? And then
he was a National Guardsman.
Okay, National Guardsman. And then he was out, and then he re-enlisted, and then it's been reported by some that served with him, apparently, that they don't like the guy because they said that he actually resigned about a year before he was going to run before they were going to be deployed in Iraq. That's the allegation.
We got a text from listener Nathan. So this isn't coming from a news outlet or anything like that. It's from listener Nathan, who is in the military currently. But he is saying Walz claims he retired as a command sergeant major, but he never fulfilled the obligation to hold that rank and was reduced to master sergeant when he retired, which he did as soon as he found out his unit was going to Iraq.
I saw that part of it on retiring as a master sergeant as opposed to command sergeant major on his wiki page, and it said he didn't complete the sergeant major school, so he did not qualify to be a sergeant major.
And I know of at least 2 people contemporaneously serving with him at that time who have come out, and it's been reported that they had a beef with him because they thought that he abandoned the group in pursuit of office at a very opportune time and avoided being deployed to Iraq all in the same thing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that lands, but I guess you can find a potential dent in anyone's armor. I don't know. We'll have to see. I think there's bigger policy issues that we can go for, though.
Yeah, I mean, his record is terrible.
It's all over the place. Yeah. If you look at his numbers, and like President Trump said, the guy hasn't met a trans issue he didn't like, I think was Donald Trump's line.
Yeah,
I mean, the writing's on the walls, guys.
Oh, very good. And Hannah, without much sleep, Hannah comes through with a zinger this morning.
It's the caffeine kicking in.
Woo! What are you drinking this morning? I want some of that. That's good stuff.
If Ronald Reagan was still around, he would have said, tear down these walls.
Perfect. But Randy, you're right. I mean, the record is terrible. The question I have is, they've basically flip-flopped. Kamala immediately has flip-flopped on all of her issues. So at what point are they just going to start, erasing the internet history and be like, he doesn't support her, and we're going to see huge flip-flops on his record, and he's suddenly changed his position on fracking or whatever, transgender
victory.
Yeah, I mean, Missourians had a choice about the future of our state, and I trusted them to make the right choice, and I think they did. And, he's a good person, and if you saw a little bit of the behind the scenes yesterday, apparently he voted and then promptly helped a woman jumpstart her car from the parking lot, and that is, that's who he is. And so really excited about our future. And, I mean, we're speaking, it could, 8 years, right? Like, it should be 8 years. And so that's well into my... And it's a long time, and it matters, I think.
It's a big deal.
And yeah, seeing the team he's built around him and the team that I know he's going to build for our state, it's exciting.
In another race that was, I think, probably the last to really be clarified, a home area guy and State Senator Denny Hoskins prevailed in the Secretary of State race, and he joins us now. Hey, we really want to congratulate you on a very, very tight and hotly contested race, Denny. Big congrats to you.
Well, thank you. I couldn't have done it with all the grassroots support from throughout the state. And I've always said there's no city too big or town too small that we didn't try and visit and get our conservative message out. But it was a very, very exciting win, in an 8-way primary with, 7 other candidates, quality candidates. I knew that probably it would take about 25% to win, and I think I was right around that.
We were saying that this morning, that a lot of people saw that red jacket, and then later in the campaign, those really sweet tennis shoes. And I mean, we've had several events here in Boone County, and of course, we were over in Cooper County, and I think I saw you at all of those. So, I mean, you really worked for it, and it paid off.
Yeah.
Yes, most certainly. Yes, the red jacket. So I started wearing the red jacket this past January, and I've got a few other sport coats that are kind of loud, and I started wearing that red jacket, and actually this past Tuesday evening, I was down in Neosho at the Jasper Newton County Watermelon Feed. There's about 500 people there, and I'm walking around in shorts and a T-shirt because this event was outside, and people said, "Hey, you're the guy with the red jacket. Where's your red jacket?" I said, "It's 100 degrees outside. You must be supporting one of my opponents because I think I might pass out from heat exhaustion if I was out here in a sport coat and jeans."
I think you're going to have to get like a red vest or something for the state fair. Well, talk to us. I mean, it's no secret that, you kind of ran on a slate of like other Freedom Caucus types at the statewide level. You were the only one to really pull off that win. Obviously, you've had some disagreements with other folks who are the nominees. So talk to us about, do you consider yourself now like the leader of the Freedom Caucus folks? And then, how are we going to bring the party together for November?
Well, yes, most certainly. I'm always be a proud member of the Freedom Caucus. And, we had some good wins last night in the Freedom Caucus in the Senate. We had some losses as well. I'm the first Freedom Caucus member to be elected to a statewide office, and very proud and excited for that. But right now we need to rally all the Republicans and all the conservatives around and work toward November. I called Mike Kehoe last night and congratulated him, as well as Attorney General Bailey and Vivek. And so I think we've got a great ticket up and down the ballot, and I look forward to going out and going to those small towns again and working my way across the state. And hopefully we can have big wins up and down the ticket this November.
That's Denny Hoskins. He's the GOP nominee for Secretary of State here in Missouri. In the interest of unity, we've been asking folks, have you heard from any of your opponents and how'd that go? And, how are you going to move towards making unity within the party? Because it's going to take some heavy lifting, I think.
It is going to take some heavy lifting. But, yes, I did hear from 3 of my opponents last night, Speaker Plocker, Senator Coleman, as well as County Clerk Shane Schuler. I heard from them last night, and so they called to concede and congratulate me on the big win. And I also heard from our 2 U.S. senators, Hawley and Schmidt, as well as my Congressman Alford. So it is going to take some unity, and I'm not saying that everything can be done overnight, but most certainly that's what I want to work toward. I want to work toward, hey, let's focus on the GOP platform. Let's focus on the Missouri Constitution. Let's have a great run where all the statewide elected officials and hopefully that just want to here in the primary get together and work toward a big win in November. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but most certainly that's what I want. I want to make sure that we all come together and elect Republicans up and down the board.
Senators, your focus turns to the statewide elected office side and away from the Senate. What are you hearing from his Freedom Caucus guys? Is this a year that sports betting will get across the finish line? You were right in the middle of it.
I was right in the middle of it, and Missourians will probably be able to vote on sports betting this November. So we'll see what happens. But we had, I think, two big Freedom Caucus wins in Senator Brad Hudson from kind of southwest Missouri, Senator-elect Schnelting out of St. Louis County, I believe it was, and St. Charles County, and then kind of an upset over in Jackson County. Joe Nicola, he's a good conservative who barely lost a couple of years ago to Mike Searpoy, and he was not the presumptive favorite there, but he won. So we'll see about sports betting. I've said that I do have some concerns about the sports betting bill that the professional sports teams have put forward, that I don't think it sets enough money aside for problem compulsive gambling. And I've said that, hey, if these casinos are going to make $25 million more net a year, that's not gross income, but $25 million more a year net income, that they need to have a stake in making sure that anybody that gets addicted to gambling has the resources in order to help with that.
Senator Denny Hoskins is our guest. He is from Warrensburg, but he represents three counties in the 93.9, the Eagle, and also KWS listening area, and those are Cooper, Howard, and also Saline counties. He has won the Republican nomination for Secretary of State, and he will face a Democratic state representative that he knows well, Barbara Pfeiffer, from St. Louis in November. Representative Pfeiffer, I know, Senator. Looking ahead to November, what are some key issues? What are your priorities in this campaign that you're going to focus on in this race?
Well, my message isn't going to really change from what I've been telling people in the Republican primary. I think, number one, I believe that elections are the most safe and secure when they're in person on election day with a photo ID and a paper ballot. I've also said that, hey, this X-rated material in some of our public libraries needs to be out of there. Part of the funding for our public libraries comes through the Secretary of State's office. And I think she's issued some statements where she said, well, Denny Hoskins wants to ban books. I'm not about banning books, but I'm just making sure that, hey, stuff is age appropriate. I mean, you wouldn't take your 10-year-old daughter or granddaughter to a rated R movie. And so most certainly if there's X-rated material in the kids section, it's not appropriate for kids, and your state taxpayers shouldn't be paying for it. I've also said that, hey, I don't trust the election machines, especially after what happened down in Puerto Rico. And I want to make sure that, hey, President Trump wins in what I believe his third general election in a row, starting this November. And so those are some of the issues that I focused on in the primary, and I think those issues will resonate with Missourians come November as well.
That's Denny Hoskins, and he will be running in November as the GOP nominee for Secretary of State. I think we should remind folks of your background, Denny, and how well that will serve you in this role. You're a numbers guy. You know a little bit about spreadsheets.
Yes, I do. I'm a certified public accountant. That's right. And I want to make sure that one of those audits that we do is audit the voter rolls. I think that's very important. Auditing the voter rolls, checking the voter rolls with death records to make sure we don't have any deceased Missourians voting, and then also comparing that to the Department of Homeland Security record of illegals that are here in the state of Missouri, and auditing the difference between the voter rolls and that list from the Department of Homeland Security to make sure we don't have non-citizens voting here in the state of Missouri. I'm like I said, certified public accountant, a former member of the Missouri Army National Guard, and so I think a lot of those skills will translate well in the Secretary of State.
It came to my attention with some friends from Oregon who are used to everyone that wants to, everyone that's got a pulse can vote up there pretty easily. Finding out that really with just showing a government ID, which can be, well, not even a government ID, just some recognized ID here in Boone County, they were told by a clerk at the office, not by Brianna herself, that all they needed was to show a photo ID and just sign their name that they're citizens, and that's all it took because of that federal registration form. The present Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, told me personally and has told us on air that that's something that should be changed. We don't have to abide by that registration form necessarily. I know there's some legal things that need to go on there. But when we asked Brianna Lennon, she said, when people register or make the application, we do run it by some federal agencies and databases. They don't run it by DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Can you change that?
Yes, most certainly. I plan on helping change that, and if it's with legislation or if it's a rule that I can propose as the Secretary of State. Missouri elections, I think we're ranked maybe 7th now. We were 11th and we went to 3rd, now 7th, but according to the Heritage Foundation. But one of the areas that we received 0 points on was making sure that non-citizens don't vote here in the state of Missouri. And so I'm going to be working with a lot of election integrity officials to make sure that we can get all 3 of those points and prevent non-citizens from voting here in the state.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us. We appreciate that. We're going to stay in touch with you, of course, as we run up to the election in November. And, you're always welcome here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, being one of our favorite sons. Thank you very much, Denny Hoskins. Appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Right. Thank you, Senator. Of course, he grew up in Westphalia, which is in Osage County, went to Fatima High School and represents now Western Missouri. But his new district is
week. I took a couple of days off. I was with my family and I slept in a little bit on Monday. And
the Wake Up fam noticed.
Even on vacation, everyone was. My brother was trying to dial into like his Schwab account, and you couldn't get in. Like it was melting down.
My son too. Yeah.
So I was just trying to ignore all of the things, including that. But it's weird. And then yesterday I kind of saw this. I survived the great one-day recession of 2024 because the stocks really have rebounded quite well. And yesterday, everything was up quite significantly. NASDAQ and S&P up over a point. Dow about 0.75% up yesterday. And that means across the board, all of the sectors were up, but really driving some of the gains were real estate and financials were up big. Now, Hannah turned me onto this story, and when I read it, I was like, this is some Gen Z Bravo Sierra. And I was thinking, that is so silly. Who would do that? And then I realized, wait a minute, I do that.
Thank you very much.
I do that. So they're saying now that grocery store tourism is a thing. So maybe we need to talk to David Wassinger about that because, of course, the LG's position in Missouri is about tourism.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I talked to some folks down in Springfield that are in city government, and they were telling me the revenue numbers for the amount of money that goes through that Buc-ee's on one day, and it's unbelievable, eye-popping. And we've all been there, right? Like everyone in mid-Missouri is like, have you been to the Buc-ee's in Springfield yet? And this isn't just about Buc-ee's, but apparently folks are saying, yeah, when you visit a new place, the grocery stores are kind of a destination, and you can learn a lot about people's culture and their society by just walking the aisles of the grocery store. And so
the wall of jerky.
The wall of jerky tells you a lot about the American South, right? I mean, it really does. And, and so in America, you'll see, and the article points out, you kind of see like tons of cereal, but like not everyone eats tons of cereal in other countries. So especially when you go somewhere outside of America, visiting the grocery store will tell you a lot about their diet. And I have a favorite influencer who's from London. And so, of course, when I went over there, I had to go to Marks and Spencer, which is like their grocery store, and buy. They have a special, it's like a character. He's a Colin the Caterpillar, and you can get like, there's cakes and like his face, and he's like chocolates or whatever. And I brought back all this Colin the Caterpillar stuff for my kids. And I think that's way more fun than just like a shirt that says, London or something, right? I would much rather have like a food, like a consumable, something you can experience. So,
I know Helene loves going to it's a stress buster.
You're about to take your big trip.
She loves going to the store though. And you were talking about grocery stores.
I'm also really cheap. And so like traveling, going to the grocery store and buying your own food can save you a lot of money.
But she loves going to foreign markets like you were talking. I mean, it's just, what's really cool in some of those, like we're going to be going to Switzerland and Germany and Austria here in just a few weeks, actually end of September. And man, it's a lot of fun being there. So you're right about that.
Writer Richard Morgan in New York Magazine called grocery stores the secret museum in every city. I love that.
Hey, for folks who were forced, and I think this may apply to some folks that moved to Columbia during the highest of the interest rates, it might be time to think about refinancing. Applications were up 16%. Week over week, and 60%, higher. This is applications for refinancing because the rates have gone down now to, it sounds high, relatively speaking, but almost a third of a point in the last week or so.
Hannah, how are you feeling? That's not enough, right?
Yeah, no, I'm still not looking at my 401k. So
yeah. Well, a little bit of some recovery maybe on the
maybe
horizon.
After September, right?
Yeah.
After we see what the Fed does.
But Aaron Hedlund from Show Me reminded us yesterday, volatility in the political scene and uncertainty with all the global conflict, everything, that's never good for markets. So
it's never good.
Count on more of this, right?
Well, I think if we elect Trump, our economy will come roaring back.
You think that's just going to be optimism? I mean, or just that he's going to sign a bunch of executive orders that take some regulatory pressure off?
Well, I think on the international front, I think people know that he'll push the button and we'll regain, we'll be America first and we'll regain our strength internationally, which I think affects the markets pretty significantly.
That metaphor of push the button, I think that's what kept us out of wars because they didn't dare attack us with a drone because they're afraid he'd push the button.
The only thing scary to a crazy person is someone just as crazy.
Action last night. Welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and it's a real privilege and a pleasure to have Mike Kehoe join us right after that very tough fought battle, resounding victory. And we thank you for being with us. We know you probably didn't get much sleep, Mike, but we appreciate you being with Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Now we're on 100% adrenaline right now. So, and as I told Hannah, this is the first interview I'm doing since last night. So you guys appreciate the service you bring to Mid-Missourians. And as you know, I spent a lot of time on your station over the years. So we're happy to be here. And you know what the secret weapon was, don't you?
What's that?
Stephanie and Hannah signed the bus.
I know. I know. I saw that. I wish I could have made it out that day. I have to tell you.
When those signatures went on that bus, the whole momentum shift happened. It was like an earthquake.
A little extra razzle-dazzle for you there, Gov.
And you know how transparent and authentic we are on the show here. And I got to tell you, Mike Kehoe, that we've got some tears flowing down my co-host Stephanie Bell's cheeks right now.
I told Hannah, I looked at Stephanie last night. I said, "Pull yourself together, man."
I'm an election night crier. I mean, you've just built such an incredible team, and I know there were so many people, and I know you were rooting for your team, and we were rooting for you. And I mean, no one worked harder than you, and it was good to see it all come to fruition last night.
I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you it was emotional for me as well.
And you got a few moments with your family. Tell us about that when you realized it's me, and you got to look at Claudia and your kids and say,
"Oh,
it's us." I know. It's us.
A great story.
That was a special moment. I'll tell you. You know, I tell my kids, I try to tell, and any young person will listen to me. Life's about relationships, and you know, one of the reasons I think we won. I believe we worked hard, but also because all the people I've met in my life over years and years and years of work and just different things, and I've always tried to keep those connections and. Boy, it sure circled back through for me last night. And so I really believe that's, I'm a person of faith. I think, the good Lord ends stories the way he wants them to. But I also believe that relationships are so important. And that was really emotional for me to be able to tell them that because I want them to do the same thing. And I hope they do.
Mike, talk to us about Crystal Quaid. You know Crystal Quaid's background as well as probably anybody over there. We remember back in the days when she was a Claire McCaskill staffer. What she bring to the mix for the rest of the battle?
Oh, yeah, I definitely know Crystal. She served, obviously, most of the time I've been as lieutenant governor. And, so I know her very well. Her thoughts are very different on how the state should be run and how government should be in your life. My thoughts are government doesn't need to be in your life because y'all are pretty smart. You don't need some politician telling you what to do every day. And I really think Missourians are, and I think they showed this last night, that they're more of somebody who believes that, we're Christian, conservative, family-based people. And the Democratic Party, as we've seen nationally and statewide, has not represented those same values. So there'll be a clear difference, John, between the way I would want to govern and my beliefs and what I think we can get done for the state and Representative Quaid's. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of time for everybody to kind of draw that case out.
Again, our guest here is Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. He wins his race in the Republican primary, a 9-way primary. Mr. Kehoe receiving more than 39% of the vote, about 274,000 votes, and his opponent will be Leader Crystal Quaid, the leader of the House Minority Leader on the Democratic side. She is from Springfield. One of the things you talked about during your recent interview with us, Lieutenant Governor, is the issue of working families, and you talked about that in rural Missouri, which used to be so Democratic, and it has obviously trended Republican in recent years. I know you're going to hear it on the campaign trail, I'm sure, because I've heard it a lot over the years from the other side. They always say Republicans are the side of big business. Republicans are on the side of big oil, basically on the side of corporations. You've heard that too. How do you respond to that?
Hey, Brian, a working kid from North St. Louis just won the Republican nomination for governor. That's how I respond to that. I believe the Republican Party is more hooked to the working man and woman now than they ever have been, for two reasons. What I stated earlier, we believe that there's opportunity in this world. You don't need government to give you a handout every 5 minutes. People want to have some self-respect and work hard and earn money for their living. And the other reason is I don't think this. I know this, Brian. You and I grew up in Democratic neighborhoods in North St. Louis. The party has left them. It's not the party anymore of, Harry Truman or Ike Skelton or any of those Democrats who were more reasonable and more central. It's the party has definitely left those folks, and the Republicans are the ones now representing the working class. Your listeners know, I am the working class. I started with nothing, and we're this is an unbelievable country that you can get to the point where I've gotten to, and we're never going to forget that. That's the dream that people need to have. In my old North St. Louis City neighborhood, we're involved in the community center. We've talked about it a bunch of times. Those kids and young people up there, they don't know what the word hope means. Mm-hmm. And if we can restore hope in some of our neighborhoods, both in rural and urban areas, by the way, and let them know that there's a lot of opportunity out here, that's what makes us a great country. And that's why I'm standing here today as this winter.
Wow.
Now, it always kind of feels like a family reunion at the State Fair Governor's Ham Breakfast, but I think the vibes are going to be really good at this year's Ham Breakfast. I know you attend every year, but the ag community really came together and supported you. What's it going to be like, and what are you planning to tell them at that breakfast?
Wow, it's going to be incredible. What's funny is about 2 weeks ago, Claudia said, I hope after, August 6th, we can take a few days off. I said, well, honey, the Fair Foundation dinner starts the 7th, so we're on our way to Sedalia today, and actually we'll be in and out of there all week. The ag community, Stephanie, just came to my back like I've never seen. And, I'm a first-generation farmer for these guys. But the backing of rural Missouri and the ag community specifically, along with our cops and firefighters and all the great groups we had, but the ag community, if you guys watch social media, I deleted my apps 2 or 3 weeks ago because I didn't want to drive myself crazy. But my kids told me and our staff told us they came to our side so strong. It's just unbelievable. And to have the support of Missouri's ag families, second in the nation and family-owned farms in Missouri, that's awful humbling. We love the State Fair. Win or lose, we love the State Fair, but it's really going to be special this year.
Lieutenant Governor and nominee for governor of the state of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, joins us. Last question. There'll be some headwinds that all Republican candidates will face because of this initiative petition abortion measure. We see how that in other states has played, ironically, against protecting the unborn in Kansas and Ohio and others. And that may filter into some of the electoral races for offices. Unity will be important. Last night, your opponents, who sort of destroyed one another during the campaign while you stood by and watched that happen, I think that's fair to say, wisely. How are you gonna go for unity? Have you heard from them? Is there going to be a kumbaya? How are we going to get there, Mike?
I got a nice call from both Secretary Ashcroft and Senator Eigel. I will tell you they were very, very, very cordial. We had a nice, short, but a very good conversation. We absolutely have to stop that measure in November. That is killing babies basically up until birth. And I will do everything I can, sacrificing even my own campaign, to bring people together to let them know how bad that initiative would be. Missouri is a pro-life state, and our elected officials have gone above and beyond to protect the innocent and the unborn. Missourians have to come together and continue to do that. We cannot let that initiative pass.
Wow.
And you're right. It's going to bring more people out, but we're going to be there to stop it.
Wow. Well, we really celebrate your victory and compliment you for a hard-fought and, well-won battle. Well done, Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. And I hope that you will grace us with your presence on Wake Up Mid-Missouri as we head towards the General, and our appreciation for making us your first stop on a big interview tour post-election.
Well, you guys deserve it, and don't forget the secret weapon, those signatures.
Thanks. Have a great day. Get a little rest.
I appreciate you.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, there he is.
What I'm hearing is that I need to charge a lot more for my autographs.
Yes,
There you go. $5 days are over.
All right.
Stephanie brought up the ham breakfast. I want to point out this is going to be the 40th anniversary of President Ronald Reagan's speech at the Missouri State Fair in Sedalia.
I think has been a subcurrent in all of our discussions for so many months now. And now the battle's on. And, the race to another statewide GOP victory, we hope, will be on up and down the ballot. There was a victor in the local representative race, and that's John Martin last night. He defeated Bryce Beal, and he joins us now. How you doing, John? Feeling good today?
I'm feeling, very good. Yeah, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Good. So what is your plan for the November election moving forward?
Just going to continue with my message of, I appreciate the voters, the 44th or vote of confidence. This is a small business owner, former pastor, a lot of leadership experience in Boone County. I'm a Boone County native, and just continuing to challenge. We want to downsize government. We want to give some tax relief to our families, and so those are some things we'll continue to charge on. My opponent, the Democrat Rathel, he's a radical left, for radical leftists, and wanting to continue to increase the size of government, which is definitely not what we need to do.
It's really been a struggle, John. I mean, we've lost some representation in Boone County and in mid-Missouri, and some of those seats have gone to the Democrat side. So, I mean, kudos to you for putting your name out there, and I think you have a really good, you're in a really good position to hold that seat for Republicans, and I'm personally excited about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I was, as far as campaigning, it was a joy going in the neighborhoods, getting to know people. They would, regularly say, John, I know your family. John, I know you're a small business owner. I know your church leadership, your leadership in our community. And that was, I think, that was the big difference in the campaign right there.
So how are you going to handle some of the economic trade wins that, you talked about downsizing government? And let's be honest, under Republican leadership, along with some COVID money, budget's grown. People get to expect programs that either are new or expanded as a result of and contributed to by growing budgets. How do you manage that? Throttling back existing programs. Those things seem to take a forever life of their own, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I just really, as I, on the campaign trail, challenge people. I think that the state government really needs to focus on law and order as a top priority, and then secondly, quality education, University of Missouri, and our schools. And then, infrastructure, roads and bridges. I think there's plenty of funds there to support that. Maybe there's some changes that need to be taking place there. And there's other types of programs that can definitely be trimmed. And I definitely think that we need a strong deep dive in a lot of these government programs that we can trim and give people tax relief. I think it's very, very possible.
Mm-hmm. Should you be elected in November, and we are absolutely going to be full force behind that. You know that, John. Where do you see that you could best serve in various committees, and with your expertise and your business knowledge and your experience as a pastor and others, where do you think you could best be placed to be effective in the State House?
Well, some of the top areas. Obviously, I've had 3 kids graduate from Mizzou, and so if I would like to be on maybe the higher ed committee to support the University of Missouri and challenges there. Anything to do with agriculture. I have a strong agriculture background. I think would be good. Or some of the business, as you mentioned. I'm a small business owner. Economic development, business growth in our area, and then I'd love to be on the budget committee, really looking at looking at some of the trimming that we can take place in some departments that are just excessive, and give that tax relief. Those would be some of the top areas I'd like to look at.
All right. Well, John Martin, we congratulate you on your victory, and we look forward to a good race moving forward against Dave Rathel, and that'll be interesting. We will, of course, be talking to you now and then between now and November. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Randy. I appreciate all the voters, the voter confidence. I thank God for His blessings and all my family and all the support they gave through the race. Thank you very much.
Now, I got to ask you: are you going to be working today, or are you going to just take a little R&R? I think I know the answer, but go ahead.
I'm working today. Got to get some things going on at the office. We got some pump trucks. We got to keep moving.
That's the John Martin we know, and I think are you going to be donating in kind some of those pump trucks? Should you be elected in November and down in Jefferson City?
Yeah, like I said, there's 5 available every day. I'll send one of my texts down there. If something comes up, we'll send them down.
Okay, all right. Thanks, John. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I tell you, it's been a real fun morning, hasn't it?
It has been. We should also bring up the ballot measures. We haven't really gotten there. There were 2 ballot measures on the ballot yesterday. The child care tax credits went down, but the police funding it was back up for a second time vote. If you recall, the courts knocked out the first vote, and that passed.
I heard some friends that said, they're generally in favor of the child expansion of capacity with child care, in this way by giving a little relief in property taxes. But I guess it was somehow speculated or, came to fruition that maybe that some of that money, that revenue loss, would go from the blind fund or something. So
from the blind pension fund?
The blind pension fund, yeah. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe that was speculation, but I wonder if that drove it. I'm not sure.
I think the default position for a lot of people is just they vote no on all constitutional amendments as a matter of principle.
Keep it in the legislative realm.
I think that's really hard to overcome, but at the same time, we're a red state, and I think, with the Kansas City police vote, seeing what Kansas City tried to do in defunding their police, I think and then seeing the courts knock out the first vote, I think for a lot of people, it was an easy vote yesterday to check yes. But then, and we're less than a week out from finding out what those ballot measures on November's ballot will be.
Yeah, and while Kansas City wasn't named in that whole amendment, certainly that was the driver behind it. But hey, it could come to a community near you, so there were some protections there in terms of some minimal levels of police funding. John, your thoughts in the last couple seconds here.
I had a nice talk when we were at the Kehoe rally with our buddy Scott Steele, Mike Kehoe's son-in-law, who Steele's Custom Meats, one of our fine advertisers.
You bet. Great
and
stuff.
He's from another state, and he kind of had a neat take on the whole thing about, kind of like making sausage. He was watching the political side of it all being made.
And that's what we'll continue to keep our eye on, whether it's spicy, not so spicy, it's still all sausage. Tomorrow we will talk with Curtis